It's all okay. It's all okay. It's all good. Okay, prophetic perspective. I have no idea what you just said to me. Okay. Okay, so prophetic perspective. If the prophetic is calling people to come into agreement with God, and thus bringing forth the things of heaven onto earth to establish the kingdom, then we must understand the foundation of how to do this. And it begins with perspective. How you see things. What do you see and how do you see it? Perspective. Because how you prophesy determines your perspective. So how do we get his perspective on situations? If somebody's in front of you, even if you're just counseling somebody as a friend, you're meeting a friend for coffee and they're having difficulties or challenges, no matter what the situation is, or just for your own life, your own journey, it's really important to see what he sees, to see how he sees, and to have his perspective on things, because he has a perspective. And I can promise you one thing about his perspective. He's not worried. He's not anxious. He's not afraid. He's really not concerned. So in getting perspective, if any of those things come into play, you can safely chuck it. So the way he sees is perfect. The way he sees people is perfect. He has eyes of love. Even for the worst sinner, he has eyes of love. His eyes, sorry, if I look out the window, it's just a habit to stare off. It helps me hear and listen than looking at you guys. Now I didn't know what I was saying. Okay. How do you get his perspective? It starts with his nature, seeing him rightly. Oh, I know what I was saying. So, even in your weakness, even in your sin, he's still looking at you with eyes of love. He's a good father. A good father, an earthly father who has a rebellious child, doesn't mean that he's entirely pleased with his behavior, but his love remains. His love is consistent. His love doesn't change towards us based on circumstances or based on our failures or our weaknesses. He's not afraid of our weaknesses. He's not intimidated by weakness. So he's really not disappointed in us. And his wrath was satisfied. His wrath of sin was satisfied at the cross. He put it on his son. He put wrath on his son. He put his anger on his son. It was satisfied. So we really have to have that perspective in our own lives, in counseling people, and in prophecy. It's really important. So getting his perspective starts with his nature, seeing him rightly. We cannot clearly understand or have correct perspective in any situation apart from starting with who he is. When we understand his nature, it helps us to go forward into understanding. So I'll say that one more time. When you understand his nature, it helps us to go forward into understanding, one, what he's doing and why he's doing it. The why is important too. Not just the what he's doing, but why is he doing it? How many of you are why people? I remember being a kid and go, I really was that one. Why is the grass green? I would go on and on and on with my dad because, well, why do the trees grow that way? Well, because, the why. And he is about the why. He really is about the why. He has purpose and intention in everything that he's doing. And we can understand that. When we have these components with understanding, we have faith to release what we see. So, for example, when you see him rightly, you have correct perspective, then you have understanding of what he's doing and why he's doing it. It positions you in a place of faith to actually release and declare what you see. It's another part of prophecy that we actually get into later. But I'm just making that statement that there's a place in the prophetic where we're not just telling people things, we're declaring what we're seeing. We're calling those things are not as though they were. But again, I'm spending a lot of time laying a foundation as first so that our hearts are positioned right. When we step out to do those things, our hearts need to be positioned correctly in him. Before you start stepping out, declaring this, that's where you can move over into witchcraft. You declare what you want. This is what I want. I'm declaring what I want. So that's why I lay that foundation of the why and the who, so that it comes out of this place of seeing him and of being found in him. And we're going there. We want to move into full partnership with the prophetic, where we're building with him, while we're like master craftsmen and we're surgeons in the spirit, where we're really taking the things of heaven, and we don't just have understanding, or we don't just even see things, but we're partnering with him to bring them to pass. And that's not even about just the prophetic. That's about being in the spirit. That's about seeing in the spirit, because when you see it, you can declare it. You're already seeing something in your life. Whether you realize it or not, you have a perspective. You're seeing something. You have a belief about God. You have a perspective about God. And your whole life filters through your perspective about who you think he is. What you see steers your life. That's intense. If you think that he's this God who's measuring your every movement and you don't measure up and he's disappointed in you, that's your reality. You will stay in a place of disappointment. You'll eat the fruit of that. Do you see what I'm saying? If you believe he's disappointed in you, you'll walk like he's disappointed in you. You'll eat the fruit of that he's disappointed in you. What a lie. Do you see how important it is to have that right perspective of who he is, his nature? As you grow in seeing him and his nature more accurately, you will grow in understanding what he's doing. The same applies for hearing. You grow in learning his voice when you learn how he talks. And how he talks is directly related to his nature. How does a natural earthly father, angry earthly natural father, talk? He has a sound to his voice, right? There was a sound. It's the same way with the Father. It's the same way with Jesus. Their voice has a sound. Nature has a sound. A person's nature has a sound about them. We all have a sound. Kindness has a sound. And in your voice, you can hear kindness in someone's voice. You can hear anger in someone's voice, right? So it's not just the seeing, it's the hearing as well. And he's good, and he's kind. He's a good, kind Father. So we need to align ourselves and agree with that part of his nature, and we'll hear his voice accurately. We'll see him rightly, and we'll hear his voice clearly. I mean, there's nothing worse than hearing people prophesy, and they're getting correct revelation, and we get into this tomorrow. There's different components to prophecy. You have revelation, you have interpretation, you have application, and so you can get correct revelation. You can see something that's accurate, but then when it comes down to the interpretation part, your perspective about who God is can totally change the interpretation of that revelation you're seeing. And by the time it's applied somewhere, it's way off in left field. The train is running down the tracks, down the hill, and it's crashing. It's the key is perspective. It starts with perspective. If you see someone in sin, well, let's say you're going to pray over somebody and the Holy Spirit reveals to you, get revelation that this person is in outright sin. What you believe about who God is and how he feels about sin will affect that interpretation of that revelation. And then how you apply it, you miss step 2, step 3 is way off. Because then how are you delivering that word? Because what you believe and how you see it and the perspective you have will come out in the way you present something. Have any of you ever gotten a word from an angry prophetic person? Really? Raise your hand. Oh, yeah. I remember I used to run the prophecy rooms over there, and I remember we did an event. We used to do a lot of prophecy rooms. There used to be a lot of conferences. And so we constantly had prophecy rooms going for events. And I remember this one event, and they have all the teams going at the same time. And I remember one time this lady came up to me after everyone was gone, devastated, crying, heartbroken because of the way that someone had delivered a word. They basically told her that she was not obeying the Lord, and that he was disappointed in her, and that she was weak, and I mean, it was horrible. And when she was explaining it to me, probably because I teach it and it's something in my mind all the time, I can break it down. I could tell the revelation and how someone's interpreting it. And I went, oh, okay. I could see the revelation that the girl had, and she recorded it. So back then we had cassette recorder things. And so she played it back to me, and I went, oh, wow. So she was seeing a correct revelation, but she was seeing a lady in a very weak place, that I believe the Lord had brought this lady to this weak place, that the Lord had brought her to the place of the cross. And sometimes, I think all of the time, when we get to the place of the cross, we are dead. We're trying to cooperate with death and dying, and all our junk comes out, and we don't have strength in that place to do good things sometimes, We're just miserable people, and we're doing all the wrong things. And that's exactly that's what she saw with this lady, and she prophesied what she saw. So there are many people that prophesy what they see. You're not called to prophesy what you see. You are, but you have to see something, and you have to dialogue with him about it. You have to have his perspective. What are you doing in this situation? Not just, I see you in a weak place, and you're struggling in your sin, and you're not doing very well, and I need you to tell me that. Really. People do it all the time. So you just come up and you just spew out what you see. It hurts people. It's devastating to people. So people take prophecy really seriously. When you prophesy a word, they take it. They live their lives by it. And it's terrifying. And don't ever just prophesy what you see. There has to be that place where you stand back and you're in dialogue with the Father, the Spirit, the Son, and you're asking questions and you're getting his heart for someone, and you're speaking the words that are in agreement with him. Revelation is one part of it. Seeing something is this first step. You know, it's the elementary step. Anybody can see. It's not hard to see. There's lots of psychics out there seeing, and they're saying what they're seeing accurately. I did it. I did it. I was good at it. It's not hard. See in the Spirit, say what you see. But when you're in having communion with the Spirit, with perspective and understanding, and saying what he's saying is a whole nother thing. It's very different. And it's important. It's the most important part. So what you see steers your life. We're at D. Matthew 9:29. Jesus said this over and over. According to your faith, let it be done to you. It still applies today. According to your faith, let it be done to you. So whatever you believe about God steers your life. According to your faith, let it be done to you. Then people get angry because they're stuck, nothing's happening. What is your belief in? What is your faith in? What do you believe about who he is? And there's some other scriptures right there. And E, I already went over that already. To the degree you know him is the degree you'll walk in faith. God does nothing apart from faith. It's important to know that in prophecy. It really, really is. It takes correct perspective and faith to see and release the kingdom. F, if you're stuck, it's because you're not seeing something accurately. Now, I'm giving you these things for you personally, but it's also important in prophecy, in prophesying, to understand that it's about seeing. I mean, when people are stuck and you see them stuck, you have to understand why. If you're stuck, it's because you're not seeing something accurately. You're misunderstanding something about God. You're misunderstanding something about God, something about who he is. So again, here's where prophecy comes in and brings people into agreement, first with who he is. So you see people that are stuck. What's the role of prophecy? The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus. What's the testimony of Jesus? It's about his Father. And God desires to be known. And Jesus desires the Father to be known. And so what are we doing? What is prophecy doing? We're bringing people into agreement with that. First with who he is. First with who God is. Then what he's doing. And then why he's doing it. And the why, always, right in big letters, always. Number 3, we're at F3. The why always relates to someone's journey of love. Why God's doing something in someone's life is always related to their journey with him. The why God is doing something in someone's life is always related to the journey of love that they're on with him. We're all on a journey of love, right? We established that at 10 o'clock this morning. We're all on a journey We're all being prepared. We're all a bride being prepared for our wedding. And it's about love. The journey is about love. It's about being changed into his image and falling in love. And being prepared. So the why is always, why is God doing this? Why is God messing in my finances? It's about your journey of love. So that you would know him, that you would love him. Always, always, always related to someone's journey of love. The prophetic word then comes and helps people to move forward in him. Agreement with him. Into their inheritance in him by bringing them into agreement with him. And then we see the purposes of God come forth. It's Ephesians 1:11. I'm supposed to be going through this quick. So I just want to talk about a few different people, and I encourage you to study this out. Talking about perspective and seeing correctly, seeing what Abraham saw, seeing what David saw. Which one do I want to focus on? Let's do seeing what Joshua and Caleb saw. Page 3. All of them. Jesus. Okay, go to the back page. We're going to do K. But please go through those other ones. Seeing what Jesus saw. Remember, it's all about what do you see. Abraham saw the city called the bride. It steered his life. An encounter with God opened Abraham's eyes, and it steered his life. And he lived that way. Same thing with David. Noah saw something. What did he see? Joshua and Caleb saw something. What did they see? They saw God. What did David see? This is my favorite one. Think about this little boy with all these strong men, strong military men, and this giant. David was no different. He was a man. The reason David took out a giant is because he saw something. He knew something about God. What did he say when he went in before Goliath? He said, it wasn't about him. It wasn't like, yay, I'm great. He said, who are you to defy the armies of the living God? He saw that his God was greater than a giant. And so he was in agreement with who God was, which brought him into that place where he could take down that giant. His faith was directly related to who he knew God was. Therefore, he was able to act that way. Joshua and Caleb, they saw something about God. I have this whole teaching on Joshua and Caleb. I did it at Keys in LA. It's this distinction, even in the body, that I believe is coming based on who you believe God is and taking land and obtaining your inheritance. A whole generation died in the wilderness because they didn't know who God was, and they refused him. I mean, God said that. They've rejected me. They've rejected me. Why? Because they refused to believe who he was. I'm telling you, this is a real reality. We are coming into this as a body on a whole nother level really soon. Time's accelerating. That's why for us, in my mind, as a company of people, getting these kind of things and having this view about who God is so important, I believe, just because of things that he's shown me. That in the days to come, we have to know who he is. Because the circumstances are going to say one thing, and we have to know who he is, and we'll do great exploits. Those who know their God will do great exploits. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be one that dies in the wilderness. And so Joshua and Caleb, if you look, when they, go in to spy out the land, and I encourage you study it out for yourself. They go in to spy out the land, and they come back with a report. The 12 come back with a report. And what did Joshua and Caleb say? As opposed to the other ones. The other one said, this is a land that devours its people. I mean, they came back with fruit, right? And this is a land that devours its people. We were like grasshoppers in their sight. And Joshua and Caleb, what did they say? Our God is with us. He's given them as our bread. This is a good land. God has given it to us. He's good. He didn't lead us all the way out here to forsake us and bring us into a land that's going to devour us. It was what they believed about who God was that caused them to go in and take that land. And as a church, I believe that we are coming again into that place where we have to choose what we're going to believe. We have to do it now in our own circumstances. For you personally, in your own, the promises and the inheritance that you have, that God's given you for your life, you will not obtain them apart from this. And it's story after story after story in the Word. It's Jesus. It's Jesus' story. For the joy set before him. Jesus saw something. I promise you, Jesus saw his Father. He saw his Father. He knew his Father was good. I had this experience one time where I had some things going on in my life, and I've kind of put into practice this by the Holy Spirit, because I wasn't smart enough to come up with it. When I've come up against these certain circumstances in my own life, I search out Jesus. I search out because we're all on a journey. We're on the same journey as him. He's went before us. He's made a way for us. And we can always, in our circumstances, we can always find him there. We can always find where he was in his own life in those circumstances. And so at this one particular time, he brought me into the council before he was going to the cross, when the innocent one brought before this counselor who was spitting at him, mocking him, smacking him. And I was there with him, and I was aware that he felt nothing but love in his heart. He didn't have any, as this stuff is coming at him, he wasn't angry, he wasn't bitter, he wasn't accusing, he had nothing but love in his heart. And I asked him, how can you feel that way? What is it about you that causes you to have nothing but love in your heart when this is going on? And immediately I came into his perspective, and he let me see what he saw. And it was, as he's standing there, I was so, his whole reality, even though he was here and it was going on in the natural, it's not what he saw. Jesus didn't see it. Of course he saw it, But he was in a different reality. His reality was different. His perspective was aligned with his father's. He was so confident in the Father's plan for his life. He was so confident in the Father's love in his love, if you're confident in his love, you're confident in his plan. They're inseparable. And so that was what he saw. His emotions weren't based on reality. His effect, what he did, wasn't based on this reality. It was his Father. That's what he saw. And so it was a place of peace. It was a place of love, and he could love them. He could love those people because God is love. And when you're in agreement with God, you're in agreement with love, and you have nothing but love in your heart. And it's no effort on your part, really, because it's who he is. And I believe that it was the same thing all the way into the garden, to the cross. He saw his Father, and he was fully confident in the Father's plan. And it's a key for us on our journey. It's the way through. It's what Joshua and Caleb saw. It's what David saw. It's what Noah saw. It's what Abraham saw. What Joseph saw. What Daniel saw. They were fully confident. I'm not saying they were without issues or problems, but they saw something. It's what set them apart. It's what brought them forward. It's what caused them to take land. They saw something. We need to see something. Accurately, we need to see something. And then bring other people into it. When you prophesy and you can have that perspective, and you're seeing something that God's doing, and then be able to prophesy that way, it affects lives, brings people into agreement with him, and helps actually move them forward into inheritance. In the garden, same thing. Seeing people the way he sees them brings them forth. Seeing people the way he sees them will bring them forth. You'll affect lives around you just by seeing them the way he does. And it doesn't even have to be work. It's just natural.